We're broadcasting across Canada on Game Plus TV in 33 states and Nevada on Silver State Sports. Brought to you in part by Vegas.com. Explore this week's most popular picks or jump straight to 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star options to match your style and budget. Whether you're planning a weekend escape or a luxury stay, your ideal Vegas hotel is just a click away at Vegas.com. Alan May, you seem like a Vegas guy. When's the last time you were in Vegas?
I honestly don't know. I think the last time they had award shows there, and I know the expansion draft I was there, the award shows when they were still doing them, and that's about my only time. I don't gamble, but I love the food in Vegas. I love the good hotels, especially when they're paid for. So always better that
way. Trust me, I get it. Hey, so the Capitals winning last night, 4-1 over the Ottawa Senators. I just looked. You are, if I'm correct, 6 points out of a playoff spot. With a month to go, what's the Capitals' outlook? How are you guys dealing with things right now?
Well, if you go by what the eggheads are saying, those ones that Money Puck are saying, they've got a 7.6% chance of making the playoffs. But I'm a guy that came from nothing in my National Hockey League career, and they said I didn't have a 1% chance of making it, and I made it. So I always believe, just like that old movie, so you're saying there's a chance, and they've got opportunity, and it has to be that old mindset, as cliche as it sounds, but that's the way athletes and coaches, the players think. It's one game at a time, one shift at a time, and if you get past that, you start looking the game the next day or 2 days later, you're going to miss out on the game you're in. You've got to be so dialed in. And I thought they've been dialed in the last two games. They lost the other night, a beautiful shootout, an awesome shootout to the Boston Bruins on Saturday afternoon, I should say. And then last night, it was a thrilling game. It was hard fought, two teams battling to climb up to that ladder. So I think the outlook, it's bleak if you're a non-believer, but you've got to believe you've got a chance, and you got to go one game at a time and let the chips fall where they may. And don't pray for the other teams to lose or blow a game. Just worry about your game. Win your games and go out swinging.
Okay, well, I appreciate the insight. And Alan May is Capitals alum, but he's a television analyst too. I wondered because with the move, and we're airing in Vegas, I should have put the Golden Knights jersey up on my set. Bad me. But like when the Nick Dowd trade was made, Al, I was like, well, okay, then the Caps are waving the flag. But maybe that was not a sign of waving the flag. What did you read on that trade, Nick Dowd from the Capitals to the Golden Knights?
Well, things were looking bleak, and then you have to go as a general manager. I thought Chris Patrick put a stamp on the team that day. It was his first big boy move as a general manager because, it was Brian McClellan 2 years ago when they signed all those guys and they fit in perfectly here, and they won the Eastern Conference. They were, second overall to the Winnipeg Jets a season ago. But the year before that, he traded some guys at the deadline, the older guys, to get draft capital, and they had a plan. And they do a really good job with the salary cap and the signings here. And they had to do that. They had to look at this team objectively. And when Dowder went, it's, hey, we're going to go with younger guys that are better skaters, guys that are, we're going to teach them down the stretch to fight the battle and be ready for next year. So I don't think they were thrown in the towel, but you have to make hard decisions in the league to be a confident general manager, and that was a tough one. And then the next one was a doozy. And I love John Carlson. I think he is a stud. He was still our best defenseman at 36 years old. 46 points. He had missed the last little while with an injury that had been bothering him all season long, but he was still bringing it every single night. But at the same time, you get a first-round draft pick, you get a third-round draft pick. So with he and Dowder being gone, you got a first, 2 seconds, and a third. So, that really helped. And at the same time, you've given young players a chance. We knew it. We had a young dynamic player coming out of college whenever they got punked out of the playoffs. And, you just got to go at it from that mindset. And sometimes, the business of hockey is dirty, but I was with the Edmonton Oilers in 1988, the summer of 88, when they traded Wayne Gretzky, and it was devastating. And who would have thought they won the Stanley Cup a couple years later? So you've got to make hard, tough decisions to be a general manager in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, man, I love our chats, Al. All these things are flooding my mind. Do you mind if we take some viewer questions? I'm smiling because the viewers love you, and they got some questions. Would you mind going off-roading a little bit with me? Okay.
Hey,
David.
I'll be here for 5 hours if you want, yeah.
Okay. David, careful what you offer. We'll take you up on it. David, number 2 in Winnipeg, writes in. He says, ask Al who was the most talented tough guy he ever faced. And that's a great question. I do so many dinners, and as do you, they always like to talk about the fighters. He's saying, who was the most talented of the fighters that you played against? That's a good question.
Well, this guy's a Hall of Famer, but Cam Neely, he started out in the league having to fight and kick ass every single night. He wasn't used properly with the Vancouver Canucks. He went to the Boston Bruins, and I remember playing against him. I played with him for a little while, and then I played against him. He scored 50 and 50 against us the one season, and he was so elite at doing those things. And then there was Bob Probert. I don't know if that was talent. That was like this raw, fierce, competitive, anger and mayhem channeled into being a destructive hockey player who could put numbers up. But I want to throw something out there. And when I think of tough guys, there was a Randy McKay who figured out how to do it. But the two players that I thought improved the most international hockey career, the very first time I saw Marty McSorley play a hockey game, he was on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I could not believe how bad he skated. And then what he became in Edmonton, and I always thought that was the mind growth of a guy like Glenn Sather, how he taught players to be more, and he convinced them. It's almost like he hypnotized them into being something better. And all of a sudden, I do believe he played in an all-star game while he was a member of the LA Kings, and he put up big numbers. And so I look at the vast improvement that Marty had. He played forward and defense. He finished, in LA, he was a defenseman every single night. In Edmonton, he was a fourth-line right winger. In Pittsburgh, he was a fifth-line right winger, when they spotted him in the lineup. And then there's this other guy that I used to fight all the time. I thought he was horrible the first time I see him. I don't mean that as disrespect, but Ty Domi, as a young kid, I had no idea who he was the first couple of times we fought in preseason. And the guy can barely skate. He falls. And when I saw him, what he was able to accomplish with the Toronto Maple Leafs, how much he improved, how much better he got, it was absolutely phenomenal. So it shows the heart and the desire, the conviction to be a player. And I think that a lot of, that goes to a guy like Pat Quinn. I know I'm missing so many other guys, but when I think of those guys, I have nothing but respect for Marty McSorley and Ty Domi and what he's achieved throughout his life post hockey. But I could I'll get off the call here, and all of a sudden I'll be remembering 10 other guys that I thought were absolutely phenomenal.
Well,
you look at a Scotty Stevens, and like what he did in his career, and there's so many guys that played forever that brought that. And like Claude Lemieux, everyone hated him, but I used to remember watching him on a bar stool during playoff games when my teams were knocked out, and that guy just got more momentum, more energy. He could go in a 5 overtime game, and he's better than he was in the first period. So you got to give so much love and respect for guys who scratch and claw every single night.
Were you around Edmonton? Like, I've done a lot of events with Marty McSorley, and like he's a big brute, but he's a big nice guy. And he said when he beat up Dave Semenko, he felt bad for a lot of reasons, but he knew that was the end of Dave Semenko's time at Edmonton because Marty became the guy. He took his job, and he felt bad about that. Do you remember that?
Well, I can't remember that happening because I was somewhere else at the time trying out myself. But, moments like that, you look back and we all love each other. You'd be surprised when we get together, the guys that, drop the gloves with each other. But that's part of the process of coming in. And, it's a different world now. You would never go in training camp and fight the tough guy. And I remember when I was in Washington, I had cemented myself and, the minor league guys, they were saying, he's coming for you tonight. And I said, let him. I said, but if he does, he's not going to play hockey anymore because I'm going to end it. Like, you have to have that attitude, that warrior-like mentality. And I told guys in training camp, they'd push me. I said, if you really want it, you better be prepared for what's coming because I'm left, I'm right, and I'm going to take you down so bad. And it wouldn't happen. But the better thing for them is there was no animosity. There was respect that earned it against the other guys because it was so barbaric and archaic in the 80s and 90s, what was going on in training camp or preseason, that if you really wanted to play, because the one-dimensional guys really came later, like late 90s, early 2000s, and I think they were out of control. So many guys that could only play one shift a game and were of no use to their team. They were a liability. Who cares about a stage fight? Well, you want guys that go out there and are destructive for, 10 to 15 minutes a game.
Well, and the other thing, I would put you in this category of some guys like Rich Preston. You would know Rico well. And not that he was a fighter, but just tough. I mean,
I loved him. And I think of him and I think of Terry Ruskowski all the time from, Winnipeg Jets days, Chicago days. I think even some Houston Aeros at my old age isn't getting to me yet, but he a phenomenal hockey player, and Jim Nilt was the guy that I admired growing up and tried to learn a lot from. And that guy was razors. When he dropped the gloves, he was a hard checker, gave it all every night. And there's so many guys as you go down memory lane that could play regular shift, penalty kill, do whatever they had to do, but they were team first guys and they'd do anything to get the W's.
The only other one, the name I want to bring up is Chris Nyland, because when I met him, I'm like, you're not that big. He would take on anybody. He's just tiny. Well, not tiny, but average size. Hey?
Well, you look what he did with the Boston Bruins. Certainly with the Montreal Canadiens. There was the other guy. He came from nothing. And, the stories of how he made the Montreal Canadiens and what the guys were telling him when he met everybody after, I believe he was drafted, they all laughed at him. But all of a sudden in training camp, they knew this guy would. There was something about this psycho kid that was asking for their autographs and had met them all in Boston. And, you just got to love that. I think you've got to be just dumb enough to believe in yourself and believe your own lies that you can do it. And you've got to have the conviction to work hard every damn day. And I'll tell you what, I played with a lot of guys that were far better hockey players than me, but they weren't bringing it every day. They were cheating at night. They were, they weren't dedicated. They come to training camp soft. And the guys who were the grinders, and people go, how'd you make it? Well, those guys were at the bar or they were at the golf course. Well, I was in the gym and I was going to sleep at night and I was doing everything I could do to play. And I know I'm not the only guy like that. I'm going to say Ty, Marty. There's so many players around the National Hockey League that put it all into it. A Kelly Buchberger, that guy, look how long he played in the National Hockey League, a Stanley Cup champ, and just a great role model for his teammates. But there's so many guys. Mike Keane, let's go back to Mike Keane, Moose Jaw Warriors. That guy, I saw him play, I think it was with Theo. He was phenomenal, how hard he worked. And we fought in the American Hockey League, and we went head-to-head every single game. And I always I hated his guts when I was playing against him, but I'll tell you what, I loved watching him play. I loved watching him compete. And there's 3 Stanley Cups, 3 different teams he won the Stanley Cup with, and he was vocal, he was hardcore. And to this day, he's still a hardcore dude that's training his ass off and trying to be the best he can be every single day.
Alan May with us, Washington Capitals TV analyst. I guarantee you didn't think you'd be coming on talking about this today. And one more on this. I do this Panthers show here in Florida. So I had Peter Worrell on, and we asked him, it always comes up, who's the toughest guy you played with or against? You know what he said, Al? Joe Sakic. And we're like, what? He goes, to have the expectations on you that guy had, and he played with them in Colorado, obviously, and to meet them every game? He goes, do you know how hard that is? He goes, that's tough to me. It's kind of what you're talking about.
Well, exactly. You can go down that category with so many different guys. I look at a Dougie Gilmore, rags to riches, like that, how hard that tiny person worked on the ice. He looked like he was wearing skin-tight Levi's when he played. He was so small. But I never seen a motor that went like that for one of the top hockey players. And just heart and soul. So you have to love those guys that bring it every single night, that they're in it. And Peter Forsberg, same way. And I loved watching Sakic play. I loved watching Forsberg and Madonna and guys like that. There's so many. This game has been littered with so many, I shouldn't say littered, honored to have so many elite, hardworking, incredible players that have brought it every single night. And there's a reason why they're so great. It's like intestinal fortitude. And Joe wasn't that big, but man, he looked like he was touching his elbows on the ice. He was, when he had turned. I loved watching him play. And Sidney Crosby to me, in Washington, they don't like me to say anything nice about him, but I still think he's the best. And because heart and soul gets me more than anything, he brings it every night. And his team was supposed to be last place this year. He wasn't letting that happen. I said, no way. I said, this guy doesn't just pull on the jersey to pull on the jersey. He pulls on the jersey to be the best. And he brings his team into it every night. Gets back in last night, a goal and assist, and he's fired up. I love the attitude that he has every game. I admire him so much.
About 5 minutes left. Ted in Red Deer says, hey, Al, how amazing to you is Ovi's durability?
Well, it's the most insane thing there is for a guy that has played as physical as he did throughout his career. And I think right now, what we're getting out of this guy is the the heart and the mind are telling the body to go, and the body's just been through so much. And, there's so many times that he's played injured, and, there's times that he couldn't hold a stick and he's played. I know that there was a time that he may or may not have had a scope on his knee during a weekend and never missed a game and came back and played 3-4 days later to get his team in the playoffs. So it's phenomenal. When you see how big he is, and I was scrolling through my phone today, my son's coming to town for spring break, and when he was little and he was just up to Obi's waist, Obi was so big, and my son goes, Dad, he's always wearing underwear when we take pictures, because it's always in the dressing room. And he was so massive. And, he's still, one of the things that's amazing is what he does to get ready every game. You would not believe the amount of weights that he uses to warm his body up every single night. Guys from my era, guys from the 90s, guys like even Chris Chelios would be crippled from what he does to get ready every game. And it's taking a toll on his body, but it's absolutely phenomenal. And, I'm cherishing every single shift, every single game the rest of this season. And because we don't know what's happening, but I have a feeling we're going to know the last home game of the season on April 12th. That could be the tell. And then we've got one more game in Columbus. That's who we first started against. But, I just admire him so much for how hard he's played, the different coaches. He's listened to every one of them, no matter how bad some of them were. But he always found a way to score goals. And here we are, 25 goals, tied with Tom Wilson for the team lead. He's 40, and Tommy's, I think, 31, turns 32 later this month.
We're at we got just a couple minutes left, but I just want your take on Capitals aside. I like the debate of people saying what's best for the NHL, getting the Detroits and the Bostons in, or do we need the Canadian teams? I'm talking about the playoffs. I think I like the new blood, but I'm sure your circle's talking about it.
You know what? I love watching the Montreal Canadiens, and a highlight of my broadcasting career was, calling the games in the booth last year in the playoffs against Montreal and being in their arena. It was, I had a rush like I was playing again. The vibe of the building, our catwalk gondola that we were, calling the game from was shaking all game long. I could feel it in my throat, and I was on the verge of tears. So I want Montreal in. I want Detroit in. I want Buffalo in. And I don't really care about new blood. I love exciting hockey teams, and I've always wanted Buffalo to win because I remember the last time they were really good, and Lindy Ruff was actually the coach, and then Ted Nolan, how exciting they were, and they were the working man's team. But I want to see the teams that bring it every night, that play with heart and soul, get in there, and you never know what can happen in the playoffs. We saw the year that Tampa was crushing it and Columbus went in, and it was, they had a 0% chance of winning, and they swept it. So that's what makes the playoff great, and who makes it deserves it.
That's why I love having my friends like you. Like if Bill Lindsay was on here a couple of weeks ago, and I said, well, Billy, they're saying about Vegas that if they were in the East, they wouldn't be in the playoff race. He's like, they're not in the East. Who cares? It's just all the stupid stuff. Yeah.
And one of the things, if I think as a businessman and say I think as an owner, we've got to have teams from different time zones in the playoffs for TV ratings. And I don't really care, but we need to have people. If you didn't have any of those Pacific teams in, the whole West Coast is shut off from watching hockey. And if one of their teams can catch fire, like I know right now, I'm watching every Ducks and every Sharks game, and I love the Sharks announcers, Drew Remenda and Randy Hunt. I love watching them, and Macklin Celebrini brings it every night. Future MVP.
Oh.
I'm saying, if I had votes right now, I'd be voting him for the Selke for how many takeaways he has and how hard he plays on the puck. But I love it. And so to be representative in every time zone is very important.
Gotcha. There, we were out of time. Thank you, Al. You got it in there. Appreciate you. We'll be right back, everybody, on Silver State Sports and Game Plus TV.